What is the Francophone Mobility Program, FMP? Quoi? The Francophone Mobility Work Permit makes it easier for Canadian employers to hire you without a labor market impact assessment, known as LMIA, if you meet certain requirements and you are destined to live and work outside the province of Quebec. What is a labor market impact assessment, LMIA? A labor market impact assessment, LMIA, is a document that an employer in Canada must usually get before hiring a foreign worker. A positive LMIA will show that there is a need for a foreign worker to fill the job and that no Canadian worker can do the job. A positive LMIA is sometimes called a confirmation letter. What are the requirements? If you're applying on or after June 15, 2023, to be eligible, you must 1. Meet the general eligibility requirements for a work permit. 2. Live and work in one of the 9 Canadian provinces or 3 territories outside Quebec. 3. Be able to prove that your speaking and listening skills in French are at an intermediate level. This would be equivalent to a level 5 or higher in the Niveau de Compétence Linguistique Canadiens, NCLC, scale. 4. Have an offer of employment for a job that's classified under any training, education, experience, and responsibilities, tier category of the National Occupational Classification, NOC, system, unless the offer of employment is for a job in a primary agriculture occupation under Tier 4 and 5. If you applied before June 15, 2023, to be eligible, you must have 1. Met the general eligibility requirements for a work permit. 2. Chosen to live and work in one of the 9 Canadian provinces or 3 territories outside Quebec. 3. Being able to satisfy a processing officer that you could score a minimum of 7 on the NCLC test. 4. Had an offer of employment for a job that's classified under a Tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 category of the NOC. If your spouse, common law partner, or dependent children want to work in Canada, they may be able to apply for an open work permit. Find out if they're eligible for a work permit. Your dependent children can also go to school or university while you're working in Canada. Find out if they need a study permit. Eligibility. Here are the eligibility requirements for all applicants. There are specific requirements you need to meet depending on where you are when you apply for your work permit. But regardless of where you apply or which type of work permit you apply for, you must 1. Prove to an officer that you will leave Canada when your work permit expires. 2. Show that you have enough money to take care of yourself and your family members during your stay in Canada and to return home. 3. Obey the law and have no record of criminal activity. You may be asked to provide a police clearance certificate. 4. Not be a danger to Canada's security. 5. Be in good health and have a medical exam if needed. 6. Not plan to work for an employer listed with the status ineligible on the list of employers who failed to comply with the conditions. 7. Not plan to work for an employer who, on a regular basis, offers striptease, erotic dance, escort services, or erotic massage. 9. Give the officer any other documents they ask for to prove you can enter the country. Eligibility requirements if you apply from outside Canada. Anyone can apply before they enter Canada. However, there may be visa office requirements that you need to meet, depending on what country or territory you're applying from. Make sure you follow the instructions for how to apply. Find out if you can benefit from the Global Skills Strategy's 2-week application processing. Eligibility requirements if you apply from inside Canada, you can only apply for a work permit from inside Canada. If 1. You have a valid study or work permit. 2. Your spouse, common law partner, or parents have a valid study or work permit. 3. You're eligible for a post-graduation work permit, and your study permit is still valid. 4. You have a temporary resident permit that is valid for 6 months or more. 5. You're waiting on a decision on an application for permanent residence from inside Canada. 6. You made a claim for refugee protection. 7. You've been recognized as a convention refugee or protected person by the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. 8. You're allowed to work in Canada without a work permit, but you need a work permit to work in a different job. This does not apply to business visitors. Or 9. You're a trader, investor, intra-company transferee, or professional under the Canada, United States, Mexico Agreement, CUSMA. Eligibility requirements if you apply when you enter Canada at a port of entry. You should apply for your work permit before you travel to Canada. However, you can apply for a work permit when you enter Canada if you're eligible. To apply at a port of entry, POE, you must meet all of the following. Be from a visa-exempt country. The following travelers need an electronic travel authorization, ETA, to board their flight to Canada. However, these travelers do not need an ETA if entering by land or sea, for instance, driving from the US or coming by bus, train, or boat, including cruise ship. Andorra, Australia, Austria, Bahamas, Barbados, Belgium, British citizen, British national, overseas, British overseas citizen, readmissible to the United Kingdom, British Overseas Territory citizen, with citizenship through birth, descent, naturalization, or registration in one of the British Overseas Territories of Anguilla, Bermuda, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Falkland Islands, Malvinas, Gibraltar, Montserrat, Pitcairn Island, St. Helena, Turks, and Caicos Islands. British subject with a right of abode in the United Kingdom, Brunei Darussalam, Bulgaria, Chile, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hong Kong, Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China, must have a passport issued by Hong Kong SAR. Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, must have a national Israeli passport. Italy, Japan, Republic of Korea, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Papua New Guinea, Poland, Portugal, Romania. Electronic passport holders only. Samoa, San Marino, Singapore, Slovakia, Slovenia, Solomon Islands, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland. Taiwan must have an ordinary passport issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Taiwan that includes the personal identification number. United Arab Emirates, Vatican City State, must have a passport or travel document issued by the Vatican. Be eligible for an electronic travel authorization or to travel without a visitor visa. Meet other requirements depending on the type of work permit you're applying for. You cannot apply at a port of entry if you need a visitor visa. If you are a citizen of one of these countries, Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Brazil, Costa Rica, Mexico, Morocco, Panama, Philippines, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Seychelles, Thailand, Trinidad and Tobago, Uruguay. If you are an International Experience Canada applicant who is not a citizen or permanent resident of the United States. If you are applying under the Seasonal Agricultural Worker Program, employer-specific work permit applicants, your employer must have completed all of the required steps for your employer-specific work permit. Open work permit applicants, you must be eligible to apply for an open work permit. You may also need to take a medical exam before you come to Canada. Find out if you need one. Biometrics. Most applicants aren't eligible to give their biometrics at a port of entry. To give your biometrics at a POE, you must meet two requirements. 1. Start and finish your application at the same POE. 2. Be eligible to apply for a work permit at a POE. Eligible applicants can give their biometrics at these POE locations. Bringing your family with you. If your spouse, common law partner, or dependent children want to work in Canada, they may be able to apply for an open work permit. Find out if they're eligible for a work permit. Your dependent children can also go to school or university while you're working in Canada. Find out if they need a study permit. Steps your Canadian employer must take before you apply. Before you apply for your work permit, your employer must 1. Submit an offer of employment to Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, through the employer portal using LMIA exemption code C16 for Mobilité Francophone. 2. Pay a $230 employer compliance fee. 3. Give you an offer of employment number, a 7-digit number required for your application. How to apply? Step 1. Make sure you have what you need. To apply online, you need a scanner or camera to create electronic copies of your documents, a valid credit or debit card. Step 2. Create your online account or sign in. You need an account to apply online. You can use your account to submit your application forms and check your status. Step 3. Get your document checklist. You must answer some questions to create a personalized document checklist. If you're applying from outside of Canada, make sure you answer these questions correctly. When asked, how long are you planning to stay in Canada? Based on the offer of employment, choose either temporarily, more than 6 months, or temporarily, less than 6 months. In response to the statement, I have a job offer and my employer gave me an offer of employment number or LMIA number, or proof of that your employer applied for an LMIA, answer, yes. The offer of employment number is the 7-digit number your employer received after sending their offer of employment to the IRCC. When asked, what type of work permit do you want to apply for? Choose a work permit with a labor market impact assessment exemption. If you're applying from inside Canada, make sure you answer these questions correctly. When asked, how long are you planning to stay in Canada? Based on the offer of employment, choose either temporarily, more than 6 months, or temporarily, less than 6 months. When asked, do you have a written job offer? Answer yes. When asked, which option best describes your work situation? Choose, I'm applying for an employer-specific work permit with a labor market impact assessment, LMIA, exemption. Step 4. Fill out the forms. Read the instruction guide before you fill out the form. The guide will explain how to fill out each field on the work permit application form. Step 5. Upload your documents. Your document checklist will ask you for most of the documents that you must upload. You can also upload other documents under client information. There's only one client information field. You may need to combine more than one document in one file and upload them together. Submit proof of language ability. For applications submitted on or after June 15, 2023, you must submit documents that prove you can speak and listen French at an NCLC level 5 or higher. This can include speaking and listening, test d'évaluation de français, TEF, or test de connaissance du français, TCF, results, a written confirmation from a college or university for a program in French. This could be a transcript or an official letter of completion. Other documents that show education in French, for applications submitted before June 15, 2023. You are required to prove that your language of daily use is French. This could include documents that show education in French, proof that you obtained an NCLC level 7 or higher for all 4 tests in the test d'évaluation de français, TEF, or the test de connaissance du français, TCF. Upload your proof of French language ability in the client information field. Remember, you don't need to prove you can read or write in French to be eligible for this LMIA exemption. Step 6. Pay your fees and submit your application. You must pay the work permit processing fee. If you want to stay in Canada longer, apply for permanent residence as soon as you meet the eligibility criteria. Visit the Immigration Canadian website canada.ca and choose the immigration program that best applies to you. Next steps. After you apply, how the IRCC process your application. IRCC will check your application to make sure you have all the necessary documents, including biometrics. If it's incomplete, it's going to be returned to you without processing it. An officer will also check the list of employers who failed to comply with the conditions to make sure that the employer can hire you, and that you qualify for a work permit. The IRCC may also ask you to go to an interview with one of the officials in your country, or send more information or documents. The online application system uses Coordinated Universal Time, UTC. If IRCC asks you to upload documents to your account, you must submit them before midnight UTC on the date the officer gives you. Make sure you know the difference between your local time and UTC. You might need a medical exam to enter Canada. If you do, an officer will tell you and will send you instructions on what to do. A medical exam can add over 3 months to the time it takes the IRCC to process your application. If your work permit application is approved, you'll get an approval letter that says you're allowed to work in Canada. This letter is called the Port of Entry Letter of Introduction. You should bring this letter with you when you travel to Canada and present it at the Port of Entry. This letter is not your work permit. You'll only get your work permit at the Port of Entry the day you arrive in Canada. The work permit will outline the type of work you can do, the employer you can work for, where you can work, how long you can work. If you're in Canada, how IRCC process your application. They'll check your application to make sure you have provided all the necessary documents, including biometrics if required. If it's incomplete, they'll return your application without processing it. An officer will also check the list of employers who failed to comply with the conditions to make sure that the employer can hire you, and that you qualify for a work permit. Depending on the type of work you'll be doing, you might need a medical exam. If you do, an officer will tell you and will send you instructions on what to do. A medical exam can add over 3 months to the time it takes us to process your application. IRCC may also ask you to send more information when you arrive in Canada, what to bring with you and what to expect when you arrive at the Port of Entry. Prepare your documents. When you arrive in Canada, you must have your passport, your visitor visa, if you need one, any travel documents you're carrying. You may also need to show proof that your work permit application was approved. One way to do this is to show the Border Services Officer your Port of Entry Letter of Introduction. You'll get this letter if you applied online or gave the IRCC an email address in the work permit application form for communicating with you. You can print this letter or bring an electronic version with you. You should also bring supporting documents, such as proof that you meet the requirements of the job, such as proof of work experience and education, a copy of your employer's Positive Labor Market Impact Assessment, LMIA. If required, the offer of employment number your employer received when they submitted the offer of employment through the employer portal, if you are LMIA exempt and coming to work for a specific employer. When you arrive in Canada, the IRCC will check your identity to make sure that you're the same person who was approved to travel to Canada. If you enter Canada at certain Canadian airports, your fingerprints will be checked automatically at a primary inspection kiosk. The system will check your identity against the information collected when your application was submitted. If you enter Canada at smaller airports and all land ports of entry, your fingerprints may be checked if we refer you to a secondary inspection, where a Border Services officer will use a fingerprint verification device to check your fingerprints. When you meet the Border Services officer, tell them that you have come to Canada to work and show the documents you brought with you. You won't be allowed into Canada if you give false or incomplete information. You must also convince the officer that you meet Canada's entry requirements, that you'll leave Canada at the end of your approved stay, that you have a valid immigration medical exam results, if you needed an exam. Remember, your results must be valid the day you enter Canada. You need to get another medical exam if your results will expire before you enter Canada. The officer makes the final decision to issue you a work permit and allow you to enter Canada. The Border Service Officer will print your work permit. Once the Border Services Officer has checked your documents and confirms that you can enter Canada, the officer will print the actual work permit for you. If you have questions, or there's a mistake on your work permit, ask the officer before you leave. Your passport must be valid for longer than the time you plan to be in Canada. Your work permit won't be valid beyond your passport's expiry date. This does not apply to citizens of the United States who show a valid United States passport to the Border Services Officer.